I think the obituary for the office building is way too premature. I firmly believe in some of the preliminary data is pointing to this, that there's a great desire by employees to come back to the office, especially after working from home for 6 months. So, but now the caveat being that we need to have flexibility. So employees want to come back to the office, but they don't want to come back full time. They want to have the flexibility of being able to work from home for certain hours of the day or certain days of the week. So we need to enable our employees that option. And I think doing that will give us a leg up in hiring, and also I think it's just the right thing to do. So what that does to the physical space is that I think we need to create a different environment. So we don't need to have one-to-one dedicated seating like we used to have. I think what we're looking at now and looking to implement is more collaborative spaces, libraries, different ways of allowing our employees to come back to the office and work in a safe, collaborative way. And so what that means is less dedicated seats, more collaborative space. It probably reduces our space a little bit, maybe anywhere from 10 to 20%. It remains to be seen yet, because we also need to allow for social distancing. So with what you take out with one hand, you have to add with the other. And so we'll see. That's kind of how it's looking like right now. But I think definitely, just allowing employees to work from home or work remotely is a hybrid model. And that hybrid model, I think, is going to be much more pervasive in the coming months. I totally agree with the premise that, humans by their nature are, need this bonding with others. I mean, very few people work individually anymore. And just the nature of work is really much more team-based. So with that, I think it's really important for people to basically get together. And the getting together piece is necessary for collaboration and what we're seeing for innovation. You can still get some levels of productivity from everyone working alone. It's nowhere near the level of productivity you get from the more informal clashing, the more informal conversations you have when people are together, especially in a situation like a lunchroom or cafeteria. So we are absolutely, that is one of the amenities we will definitely bring back in our future state. And we are looking at ways to provide for some more social distancing within that area, and also not having everybody there at once, but also having maybe times when people just show up. So it's a schedule. I think, as I mentioned before, spaces will change. I think we definitely want people to come back to the office for that collaboration, or give them the option to come back to the office, but that will support what is the new normal, and that new normal being more collaborative spaces, less individual seating, and more social distancing, but also giving them the tools to do the work. And at the end of the day, that's what we do. We enable the business. We give them the tools to do their work. You have to think about the response to the pandemic as a continuum. So the immediate response to the pandemic is we have to figure out a way or devise a way to get people back into the office when it's safe and when some of this pandemic subsides. And that's the work that we're doing now. And some of the packaged meals, so we'll still provide food services, in the form of prepackaged meals. So that creates opportunities for our partners to bring and work with different entities to bring different types of food. So we'll have a combination of both. We can have a combination of both internal food services provided by our traditional cafeteria style offices, and maybe partnering with other larger food vendors to bring in prepackaged food. And as we come back, and as our offices, as the population in our offices increase, we're going from the prepackaged foods to more of the traditional food offerings of the hot food offering, which is seen as a welcomed amenity to many of our offices. And that's going to shortly happen in our offices in Amsterdam, where we have a larger population. That's one of the first offices we opened in Europe. Yes, absolutely. I think they will. So there's two types of facilities. One is where they actually cook the food on site, and there's others that are more serveries where the food is cooked off site and brought there and distributed to the employees. So I think there'll probably be more of the latter, depending on the population of the office. I think, as we look to offices where people are only there for a few hours a day, maybe in the beginning. And you have to remember that I think, once a vaccine gets developed and life returns to a more normal cadence, I think there is going to be a desire for more going back to how things were in the past to some degree. I think we'll still have some flexibility, but I think there'll still be a need to offer food as an amenity. That I don't see that going away. But maybe the types of food that we're serving and maybe the duration of that lunchtime or period of time will probably extend as we have much more flexible working hours. It pertains to, supporting the real estate strategy in the new normal. As I said, we're really looking at this in three phases. One is the first phase is the reaction to the pandemic and getting people back into the office in a phased approach. So that work is ongoing, and we are, we're assisted by several companies. One is ServiceNow. We're leveraging their app to help us get people back in the office, and that's the more immediate concern. Just getting everybody back as cities allow us to do that, and doing it in a very safe, first of all, safe way. The second piece is, when you think about it, there's this work from home piece, and working from home creates a much more flexible environment for our employees. The net effect of that is that, we'll have people coming into the office at different times or different days. So there's less of a need for dedicated space and different kinds of space. So that's how we would enable, is that we are changing the nature of the space that folks work in. And that will allow us to support the business better. And then the last piece is one that is much more complicated. It's the work from anywhere piece. And working from anywhere has a much greater compensation and tax and immigration issues, which means you could be working in other countries and other states, and those have far-reaching ramifications. But how we're fortunate at Uber in that we started this journey before COVID. We started with building these large hubs around the world in cities like San Francisco, New York, Amsterdam, London, Dubai, Sao Paulo, Singapore, India, and various other countries and cities, whereby we would have these large hubs of talent. And it was a way to consolidate and to create that environment where we had full service catering and we had many of the amenities that made us an employer of choice in these key core markets. So what the pandemic has done is really accelerate that move to consolidate our portfolio around the world into these larger hubs and allow us to create that more flexible environment and drive cohesion in our culture and our community. One piece of advice would be to stay flexible because it's changing every day. And, initially, when we thought about this, we thought that we would have to put up barriers everywhere. And again, we were thinking about this as a reaction. So now the world's moved on a little bit. We're closer to getting a vaccine. That doesn't mean everything is going to go back to the same way it was. I think we need to be much more thoughtful about how we invest in our facilities, and to make a big bet right now, I would stay away from that in terms of making big capital investments in changing our facilities as a reaction to the immediate pandemic. I think we need to take an iterative approach, stay flexible, be closely tied with our environmental health and safety partners to look at what the right solution is going to be. And let's not forget, many of us have been working from home for 6 to 7 months. So we can continue some of that in some form or fashion as we figure this out. The short answer is yes, we can approach it globally. And the approach is really laying out some core principles around, number one, safety, number two, supporting the business, and it's really thinking about those core. If you focus everything around safety, we're also, remember, as a global organization, we are governed by the rules of each city. And and I say city because every city, what we've seen, it's not just the country mandates, it's also the city mandates. In the United States, it's even more localized than that. It's by even certain counties. So we take our guidance, number one, by working with some health officers that we've employed to help us think through what is the safest solution. So certain things around wearing masks, around social distancing, those are sort of, table stakes. But then we take a second piece of guidance by whatever the local jurisdiction is. So in Amsterdam, we were able to open and increase the population to the next phase because we're allowed to do that by the local ordinance. While at the same time, we're also adhering to some very safe standards around social distancing, around checking in with our, leveraging this app that we as I mentioned before, leveraging ServiceNow, which basically every employee has to check in every day and say that they check themselves to make sure they don't have a fever and go through a series of questions before they can come into the office. And that's enabled through our ServiceNow app. But I would say that's how we're operating. And we have a dashboard that looks at our population counts around the world. So everything's opening at different times. Here in the United States, we just opened New York and Washington, D.C., so we're seeing more things open on the East Coast of the country versus the West Coast. So it's a slow, iterative process. Yeah, so there's been a couple of, there's been numerous learning experiences along the way, but I'd say in the very beginning when we first started to open the offices, it became very clear that we did not have a very good employee experience. So by that I meant, it was the food was not great. The employee experience of using conference rooms with a mask on, that was not great. There were numerous things. So we learned and adapted and pivoted to adapt what is to the new normal and create a better employee experience. So we've improved the food. We've allowed employees to remove their masks when they're in a conference room by themselves, or they can maintain some sort of social distancing. Again, many of these rules are dictated by the local jurisdiction, but in general, we've seen a much greater improvement in the employee experience. The other thing we've done is we created a video in-house to basically demystify what that experience is going to look like before an employee goes to the office. So we're trying to remove the angst or the unknowns because if you've been working from home for 6 months and now you can come to the office, you have that option to come to the office, you want to understand what the rules are. How's this going to work? What happens when I check into the front desk? How does the app work for ServiceNow? How does this whole thing work? And creating or developing some videos to teach our employees how it works greatly reduces the anxiety, greatly improves the employee experience. And now we have opened over 170 offices around the world. So we're well on our way over the 50% mark at this point. And we still have many more to go, but we've learned quite a bit in driving a more positive employee experience to allow employees to come to work in a safe and productive way.